Elijah McClain, an update on that police brutality story. So please tell us about that.
Yeah, well, so I guess we're at just over 2 years since Elijah McClain was killed by, I think it was the Aurora police, which is a town outside of Denver, actually not too far from where I live. And
Yeah.
it was really after the George Floyd thing sparked, I think, in particularly the Denver but Aurora area, one of the causes that they picked up was Elijah as a part of their Black Lives Matter rally. For them, they were like trying to get justice for him, rather than being as concerned about George Floyd or something like that. It was a whole movement, but that was their like particular demand in their area. Now, in November of 2019, so this was 2 or 3 months, Elijah was killed on August 30th, 2019. The Adams County, I believe it is like, the county that the murder happened in. They declined to
Right.
prosecute the officers or the paramedics involved. And then now, just I think it was actually on the anniversary of his death or right around it last week, we got the announcement from the state prosecutor that they were going to go ahead and move forward with charges against 3 police officers and 2 paramedics. Now, at least
Yeah.
as far as the research I've been able to do, Will, it's not entirely clear to me how maybe involved all 5 of these people were, but at least the paramedics were involved in administering the ketamine, and the police were
Yes.
involved in giving that order, and were involved in, I think, restraining and confronting Elijah. And so I guess briefly going back to what happened to him on August 30th, he was walking home. I think maybe you could say he was like acting peculiar. I think he was like kind of singing and dancing around.
Yeah.
He was confronted by police, and rather than, just listening to everything the police were demanding that he do, especially seeing that he wasn't doing anything wrong, somehow it escalated, and, his strange behavior then became something the cops identified to instruct the paramedics to give him ketamine. Will,
Right.
I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about the use of police officers, by police officers and paramedics, of ketamine, and the possible repercussions of doing that. And the big issue in McClain's case was that depending on how you look at it, they either misguessed his weight or just were completely negligent and shot him up with too much.
Yeah.
The medical, I guess the autopsy of the state coroner found that they gave him 500 milligrams when they should have given him 325. And so they
Yeah.
gave it to him for somebody not quite twice his body weight, but pretty darn close to it. Like they gave him a dose for a 200-pound man, and I think he was 143. So
Yeah.
it was quite the over guessing weight. And also, that would seem to be one of the things that well, if I wanted a drug that I could like deploy in these kind of situations to make somebody calm, I think one of the requirements that I would have was that there really wasn't an overdose risk, and it was easy to dose. You give every adult essentially the same thing.
Right.
Because as I'm guessing, a lot of times people with like mental illness, like they overdress and wear too many coats and stuff like that, and so they look a lot bigger than they actually are. Um,
Right.
so I wouldn't guess that this is, happens. Wouldn't be surprised if this happens a little bit more frequently. According to this article I read, and it does seem to be the case, that it was the difference in the autopsy. This autopsy showing that it was medical homicide that caused Elijah to die, as being the reason
Right.
that this prosecutor pressed charges, whereas the initial autopsy didn't show that. There's 32 total charges. I think the most serious is negligent homicide. And while I am not opposed to charging any of these people, I do think that it is just a little bit going after the lower level people, and not the people who put this policy in place, that I think
Right.
predictably led to this kind of outcome. So I don't know if you have anything else, if you feel I missed any other important details. This is something we've been talking about for a couple of years, so sometimes I forget all the little things in here, Will. But maybe, just maybe, and I think from the first time we talked about this, we would be very surprised. Somebody could be held accountable for this death.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you covered all the updates on the news. One question that I would have something I'd like to look into is the decision to use ketamine specifically to sedate people in these situations. Because I know in a lot of times like they will use a benzodiazepine, a more like common substance. Like ketamine is kind of a strange drug to use. It's like it's used in for animals and animal anesthetic and stuff. So yeah, I'm curious like how these city health departments or police departments decide to use ketamine versus other drugs, which like benzos I think have less of an overdose risk. So like I'm very curious why they make these decisions.
Yeah, well, and I'm also curious, Will, why there hasn't been more media coverage about the police running around shooting people up with horse tranquilizer, because we all know
Yeah,
that,
I will say that.
yeah, that's the case. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the last thing. The Star Tribune in Minneapolis has done a great write-up on their local police killing people and all the times that they've given people near fatal overdoses of ketamine during these kind of like mental health situations.
Right.
It's crazy.
And I, on a past show, I talked about two other cases. I think one in South Carolina, one in Florida, where they gave somebody ketamine and then either they laid on the person and that killed them, or the ketamine itself killed them. But this is, again, a predictable outcome that's happened at least several times, and that's just been like something that almost nobody reports on, and usually the police don't, from what I could tell, don't even disclose like publicly if they did administer ketamine during an arrest.